All right, everyone, welcome back to Clean of the Lifts. Ryan, don't sue us. We have everyone here today, finally. Last episode, it was just me and Adam. However, today, it's the whole panel, excluding Bray, unfortunately. So if we have any questions to quickly defer to him, someone else will have to do it. So today we have, as always, David, Mally, Adam, and myself. And I want to kind of jump off a point that me and Adam were so close to making last episode, and I want to explore it here. And it is the relationship of ego and identity, and the interplay, not just between those, but how, these two things play into powerlifting, right? Everyone has an ego to some extent, some more than others. Can this be a positive influence on your lifting and training? Can it be a negative influence? How do we control it? All these aspects, I think there's a lot to discuss here, so I want to discuss it. And I think we can start off by, let's explore initially if ego is good or bad. How do you guys feel about, the ego of a lifter? How do we approach this?
Be the cockiest guy in every room, fucking go in there, start saying shit to everybody in the gym, just talk shit to everyone you see, don't even lift, and then just fucking go home and train at home.
Is
just go
that
there
good?
and just start.
Do you think that makes a good athlete? That's the question. Like, you're describing ego. Absolutely. Do you think that makes a good athlete? Because I think a lot of people will argue that, having too much ego can lead to some, rash decisions, right? Like, that's the big thing, like ego lifting, right? That's a commonplace concern. Do we maybe think, Mally is advocating for, ego perhaps being a good thing, Mally? Do you think that ego lifting within the sport of powerlifting, which I would actually go so far as to say is competitive ego lifting, right? How do we play with this?
I think it has a lot to do with your maturity level, right? Maturity levels in terms of, can you make quality decisions with set ego? So I'll elaborate on this a little bit, right? It's like, we have an ego, we think we might be a little bit better than other lifters. It could be useful, right? It inherently puts a little bit of pressure on you to perform because, you maybe, like Mal said, talk some shit, and it puts the right amount of pressure on you. And that could be valuable for sure. But if you don't have the maturity to continue making proper decisions in training, and you just let it get the best of you, and it leads to loading too much weight all the time, accumulating too much fatigue because of that, then obviously there's some negative repercussions to it. So I think it has a lot to do on maturity levels of the lifter. If you are mature and continue to make good decisions with set ego, it could be massively productive. But if you're maybe not so mature or educated on programming related philosophies or moving through training effectively, then it could be a huge downfall and lead to things like injuries or plateaus, things like this, because you're just rushing the process a little bit too much to, I don't know, live up to that ego or all that shit you're talking. Is that coming through?
Yeah, I think that we'll often see an overabundance of almost uncontrolled and unrestrained ego. And Mally will love this, especially in juniors, right? Especially in like subbies that think that like, I'm next up. And yeah, I think to an extent you'll often see that influence their decision making, right? Because they lack not necessarily humility, because I think that even at like the top level of open lifters, we'll get into this, have an abundance of ego, but you let their ego generate their like acute day to day in a sense, as opposed to like a greater goal. Is that more or less what you would agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, what I was kind of going with in the. Oh, sorry, David. You something to say?
No, it's fine. I totally agree with that, and I think a little bit ego in powerlifting is a good thing. Just because the way powerlifting is as a sport, you kind of need ego. It's basically going to be that voice in your head that says, yeah, I can fucking lift this weight, or I can do this, or I can grind through this set. Because without it, it's going to be a lot harder to kind of push yourself to those limits. And people have when they want to chase PRs. But in that sense, it is also a double-edged sword. There's a lot of athletes out there who maybe put ego a little bit first too often, which is where they're like, oh, they will neglect that leggy feeling, or if they're a little injured, they'll kind of push through that too much. And that's where they'll get like, I don't know, a torn hamstring or a hip. But yeah, I think ego is definitely good in this sense, but we have to learn how to balance it.
Me and Adam is what you're talking about. Adam snapped his hamstring trying to sprint against us, and I tore my head trying to squat. So
I think that
ego is good for competitiveness. Okay,
the powerlifter's ego-driven sprint session has been the death of so many careers. I think that's the one that like
going uphill. It was bad.
Okay, well, you should have actually torn your hamstring doing an uphill sprint. That's like how you phase yourself into sprinting. But
I think it was downhill, actually.
There's no way that sprinting downhill won't rip your shit.
On, give Adam the uphill, bro. Come on.
Guys, tear my hamstring. It was a slight strain. Okay, it's not.
Ripped it clean off the bone.
You're out for like 3 months. What are you talking about?
It was a month. It was like a month. All right, give me a break.
Okay, I wanted to say something about that part, but where I was going with the start. My joke, what I was kind of thinking about was kind of what you guys said, but I have an example. Like if me, Adam, Nick, David, if we all showed up to the gym and we're talking a little shit to each other, we're talking crap, but all of us have like RP6, RP5 squat days or something like that. We're not going to sit there and like ego check each other in the gym and start like lifting heavy weight and trying to do more than what was planned. We're still going to kind of stick to what we were supposed to do. Maybe during that session, Adam will probably look at me and be like, I've never loaded that in my fucking life or something like that. But that's just kind of like friendly banter. But I think there are some people, I have seen this, where people will take that kind of shit talking, let it get to them during a session, or it might even not even happen in the gym. It might happen like on Instagram where your competitor is saying something and they'll let it kind of sway their blocks or their decision making during the session or sessions. And I think that's where ego can be quite detrimental. So what Adam said about maturity, and then what David said about ego being very beneficial, I think both those things kind of have to be put together to create a good powerlifter.
Yeah, I think with a lot of things, like even like a maxim within life is, the dose is what creates the poison or whatever it is, right? Like too much or too little is obviously, extraneous in either end. And, perhaps you would argue that ego is the same way, where like if we have a deficiency in it, we lack drive. And if we have a surplus in it, we lack good decision making. However, even in saying that, I don't know if I fully agree with that in the strictest clinical sense. I think it's almost that the application of where you place that ego is where it's more important, right? Wherein I can't think of a single athlete, especially in not even in powerlifting, but in any sport, who's existed at the very, very top that hasn't showcased an extreme and excessive amount of ego in terms of their mindset and where they place themselves, right? Like, we're thinking Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan,
Say it.
Mike Tyson. I don't know why that took me so long, right? There's obviously like these prime athletes that they consider themselves kings. So I don't think that, ego is necessarily something that should be brought down. I think it's just where do we place it? Right. And I think that what we've what we're coming to the conclusion of in this little discussion is that ego just can't affect the acute decision making of the day-to-day. Like once ego gets into the point where it's like, I need to be stronger than this guy today, you know, if it isn't competition day, it won't help you, right? If it affects your training, it won't help you. So it's not necessarily something that needs to be tuned, but more so directed, right? Do you guys see what I'm getting at with this?
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Right? Like, because Mal even said it, like, we don't ego check each other. Like, never within training, even against, like, when I trained with Adam, did I go, ooh, this guy's squatting this. I gotta squat, you know, the same amount. It's like, no, I'm going to hit what I have to hit today. And then come meet day, hopefully I out-total him, right? Like, when competition occurs, then we can drive the ego into our decision-making because there's a genuine tactical decision there to some degree. But within training, you know, do you guys think that ego has any place within training?
I think for some people it does, right? Like I think some training partners definitely do feed off each other, but it's rare. Like the situation would really have to line up, similar weight classes, similar strength. I have seen it before though, and they kind of go back and forth, and maybe they are making those more acute changes day to day, but like in a little bit more of a managed sense, like it wakes them up, it makes them want to train a little bit harder. Does that, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I feel like it can affect those acute sessions to an extent, right? Like having an ego can make you push a little bit harder in those day-to-day sessions if the circumstances allow for it, right? Like I've been in this situation before where I had a really good group of training partners. A couple of years ago, it was like Rich Davidson, shout out Rich Davidson, Cam, Graham. They're all bigger than me, but I think we all had a little bit of ego in those sessions, and it didn't make us do anything stupid, but we did feel like we were being held to a little bit of a higher standard, or we like needed to prove ourselves in those sessions. And I do find that was like massively productive for my training during that phase. So maybe there is a little bit of disagreement. Like maybe I did let it affect, actually, I don't know if I let it affect my decision-making, but the ego and having those people around woke me up. It made me want to train harder, made me want to prove myself in those day-to-day sessions. And that's where maybe I found some value in the more acute ego. But again, right, like there still needs to be some maturity. I wasn't doing stupid stuff constantly. But I think that's something to look at as well, is like maybe it can be used in day-to-day sessions every once in a while if you have the right group of people around you and the circumstances really line up. But I do think it's rare.
Because the question I want to pose right now, because I'm playing with it in my head and I can't find an answer right away, and you know, I worry that we might not even be able to find an answer, is that there is almost clearly, like instinctually, there is ego lifting that works and ego lifting that doesn't, right? Like these sessions that you're talking about, Adam, I've not been a part of these exact ones, but similar ones, even with yourself, and they absolutely do fuel your training. But at the same time, even as a junior and watching, you know, similarly, you know, inexperienced, less wise, if you will, lifters, they have had ego-fueled sessions that have went dramatically wrong. And what is that actionable difference that turns an ego-fueled session from bad to good? What is the change that makes it so the ego fuels you and doesn't, you know, bring you down to some degree? What is it? Because I don't know.
Competitiveness, I would say, in some way, like experience, competitiveness, maturity.
No, I don't know if that's what he's asking though. I think the big difference between ego turning out really bad in those day-to-day sessions versus good is the ability to continue keeping the long sight goal in mind and making sure that you're not killing your progress of the block. Like you're allowing the ego to fuel you to maybe hitting the top end of your ranges on that day, right? Like maybe during that session, if you had a load range of like 260 to 275 on a squat, it's like use that ego to help you hit the top of the range, but we're not making stupid decisions and going 15 kilos over. Whereas these young guns, you know, they let it get to them a little bit too much, and they do go like 15
Junior
kilos,
hater.
20 recommendation, and then they completely sabotage their blocks, right? But I think that all cycles back to like, are we a mature lifter yet, or are we not a mature lifter yet? If you are a mature lifter, trust yourself, let it fuel you up, make the right call, push yourself. But if you're a junior who doesn't have much experience with decision making, it's just like, just stick to the plan, trust your coach. You don't have enough data to make those big decisions quite yet.
I got a
Am I
question. So no, I think you're on there. I have a good question. Since I love doing like objective, what to learn from something like this, I got a question for you or any of the other guys. Let's say you do have a client who has this issue, because I've had clients like this. We've probably all had clients like this. What do you do as a coach to get them in check, to try to show them what the long-term goal would be? Like, what would some of your suggestions be to an athlete, or is there something you do that's more aggressive to try to like teach them?
Map it out for them, right? Like if a young lifter is struggling at understanding the big picture, or they easily feed into the ego to make bad decisions, then map things out for them. Like, this is the goal over the course of the block. This is where we're trying to get, and that goal at the end of the block is going to be awesome. But if you do something stupid too early on, it's not going to work out. So you got to change things from like a week to week perspective with those guys to, okay, we need to kind of map out numbers for the entire block, at least to give us a course of action here, something a little bit more realistic.
Yeah.
And then if they mess it up, just be honest with them. Like, hey, you might have cooked yourself, buddy. Like, maybe we need to make some serious adjustments now, depending on how bad it was.
And sometimes, like, I've had some athletes who I will notice that they're doing it. I'll almost let them get to like week 3. If it's a 4-week, 5-week block, I'll almost let them get to that point and just be like, let's look at your loads. Let's see what you picked. Let's see what, if it's definitely your ego or your overconfidence and you're just trying to get carried away with the end of the block goal. So I almost let them do it. That's not something I coach like that sometimes, depending on personalities. And then I'll be like, okay, let me teach you now. Versus tell an athlete right in the beginning, be like, just listen to me. Then they might just be like, we've talked about buy-in before, right? Like, that's an easy way to get people to have buy-in my opinion.
I mean, there's always going to be value in allowing people to make mistakes and learn from it, of course. And I think all of us allow athletes to make mistakes sometimes. But I'm talking about, like, if I've been working with someone for a while and we've had conversations like this in the past, where they should have learned their lesson already, then it becomes important to help them see the big picture of the phase we're in, right? What we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like a specific mindset change, even, because that's what I like to play with. And all I'm coming up with, and maybe I'm blanking a bit here, is this change from like I am the best to I'm going to be the best. That admitting that like it's going to take some work and accepting where you are now. But I think that's still maintaining that sort of like further goal of like, yeah, I think that it's good to fuel that ego of wanting to be at the top of the game. You just need to admit sometimes that you're not there yet, right? And I think that might be like that crucial step, because I do think that like, hell, even talking to people that have said that like they almost are so sure of themselves when they say like, yeah, I'm going to be a world champion, which I know it immediately goes against what I just said. But they say it with such a certainty that it's almost like they're already there. Do you know what I mean? Like like saying so clearly, I'm going to make it to Worlds, that they almost admit to themselves, or not even admit to themselves, but they tell themselves that they've already done it in a way, so it lessens their intensity to get there. I feel like we've actually talked about this before. Am I treading old ground?
We've talked about like the how to get to the next level and stuff.
Yeah. But so it reverts back to that in a sense, right? Where it's like the ego needs to drive you to that point, but it can't let it stagnate you into that point. The ego needs to match both where you want to be But also there needs to be enough humility, I think, to accept where you are. Right? I think we've talked about ego, right? How does it tie into identity? Do we want to get into identity? Do we have any more words to talk about with ego?
Yeah, don't make it your identity.
Why not?
Because that's where you'll fail. Like, if you tie your identity to your ego and it's like, I'm the strongest, like, I'm the strong guy, and that is like your persona, then when that day comes and you're injured, or you bomb out of a meet, or a train just doesn't go well, you're going to have a midlife crisis. You're going to be asking yourself, why am I doing this? You're going to watch a bunch of movies to find it again. And, it's just not worth it.
This is actually dead on why we want to talk about this.
So you're saying,
Because, like, this is what me and Adam
So
talked
you're
about
saying-
after that episode.
so you're saying don't use ego to be your identity, not powerlifting.
No, I'm saying don't tie your identity to your ego. So it's like, yeah, you may be like the powerlifter in your little bubble of friends. You may be the best or whatever, right? But don't make yourself, yeah, I'm the strong guy. I am the strong guy. Because when that day comes where you're not strong and you're like number 3 or last or whatever, you're going to have a midlife crisis and you're not going to know what to do with yourself.
Yeah, like, so when we ended that episode, this is actually the little conversation that me and Adam had, where it was like, this is what, I won't speak on Adam's behalf, though he does feel similarly. This is exactly what I went through and what I'm going through even now, where it's like a lot of my identity was tied, like, to put, very bluntly and even like simply, the ability to pull 800 pounds, right? I still get reference that bullshit I said about I don't need the tactical advantage or whatever, I'd pull 800. It's hard to relate to that when I can't do it. I can't pull 800 pounds. So who said that? Right? It's a version of me that I am currently not, and that's hard to reckon with. This idea that, like David, you said, if I am my strength levels, I am a strength athlete. Yes, I can still resonate with being a strength athlete, but I can't resonate with being a strong athlete. And being a former strong athlete, that is very difficult to reconcile with, and it's something that I am struggling with, that I don't know exactly how to cope with. Like, even training day-to-day at Kings, knowing that at one point I was the strongest guy in the gym and I am no longer that, it's hard, right? I don't like to even look at people in the eye sometimes because it's, very difficult for me to reconcile with the fact that I can't squat or deadlift right now. I don't have a total. I'm not a strong powerlifter. And because that was my identity that tied up my life so long, and for so much of it, it has been hard to say, like, what am I? Right?
Yeah, because that's definitely like probably I would say a big issue with stuff like that is when that does happen and people end up tying their self-worth to like what they could do and to the numbers that they used to do and stuff like that. So that's when it becomes like a huge spiral, right? So if we can kind of take that on before that happens, I think mentally wise, we'd be a lot better. If that makes
This
sense.
is interesting.
Here's a question I want to ask though, is like, Nick, in the period where you were deadlifting 800 pounds, you were going on podcasts and talking your shit and having fun, was ego and feeling like the strong guy not conducive to getting to that point? Like, was it not a necessity to get there?
No, it absolutely was. And I want to explore this topic more because I have found my own extremely me style ways of coping with this ultimately. And it isn't exactly what David is lining out, but it's still ego driven, and it was ego driven to get to that point. Absolutely. I think that my personal opinions on ego is that it is extremely powerful and you should lean into it as much as is productive, almost to a fault. right? Because it did absolutely get me to a point of pulling 800. When I pulled that 800, it was out of spite for, everyone. At that point, I was talking so much shit online on so many forums, and that 800 was to spite every single person who at that point over the last 7 years had doubted me for whatever I was. I wanted to prove them wrong. Be like, I'm going to pull 8. And I did it. And I was like, now what? Fuck with me.
It's really funny though, because when Nick was going through this, when he was at that stage, I was doing the exact same thing on bench. I was calling out Delaney Wallace, telling him I was going to out bench him at Worlds. And speaking for myself, that was massively productive. It put a massive amount of pressure on myself. And I had the best bench phase of my powerlifting career. I still haven't matched that again. But me putting myself in that position of high pressure through talking shit, letting, feeding the ego a little bit. Dude, I was dealing with the same thing. I went into that 210 session I'm better than these people and I'm going to prove it right now. So yeah, it's been massively productive in my training in the past and I don't regret it. But yeah, when you can't live up to that, I'm not living up to it right now. Yeah, it sucks. It fucking sucks.
It's really feast or famine, isn't it?
I was gonna say I was gonna question David. I was gonna question David because I don't agree with what he said about not having the ego. Sorry, my laptop said battery's low, so I gotta make sure it's plugged in while I'm talking. But
I never said don't have an ego.
No, you're saying don't let it be your identity, but I think it's necessary to get to the top. You need to have an ego. I think you need it.
Don't make it who you are.
I think it has to be. Look at every sport's highest level athlete.
Okay.
They have an ego and then they have a downfall or they retire, right? And that's just what happens to every great athlete, or they come back. It just has to happen. I think it has to be part of your identity. I think it has to be of your growth. And then there's going to be something that fucking happens in your life that's going to force you down back to earth. And then you're going to grow as a person and you might be a better person, but you're still going to have a little bit of ego when you start cooking again because you need that.
So I agree with you. I 100% agree with you because you said you need ego to be a part of your identity. But what I'm saying is you can't make it your entire identity because when you fail that's when the down spiral will start.
But why are we scared of failing?
Isn't
that what drives us?
Who's not scared of failing, but it's
you can be scared of failure. I think everyone's scared of failure. It's what happens when you fail.
Yeah, it's the mental spiral that happens when you tie your whole self-worth into it, is what I'm saying. Because there's athletes who do get injured, who do whatever, just say, I don't know, what's an athlete? I don't know, Sidney Crosby or something, if he gets injured, right? He's still gonna bounce back and he's gonna use that ego to drive himself, right? But he's not gonna tie his entire self-worth into his current performance, whereas when he's injured and he's not playing, he's not going to quit, if that makes sense. Because we do have a lot of athletes in powerlifting who will tie themselves to their egos, and then when nothing is going right, they end up burning out or just dropping out of the sport completely.
Okay, I think we're talking about two different levels. Because at the bottom level, I think that would happen. I think at the highest level, you give someone who's going to be or have an ego. Nick and Adam are not showing their ego anymore on social media because they're I can't talk shit when I'm not doing nothing. But they still have an internal ego that says I can't fucking do this.
Yeah, which is good. That's basically what we were talking about with the first half.
So it's still their identity that's allowing them to do it.
It's a part of their identity. It's not their whole identity.
I mean, I'll speak from a somewhat tragic degree of I definitely did make the mistake that David is detailing out of making my ego very much my identity. And I didn't have those man, some Freudian scholar is going to listen to this podcast, hopefully not, and just realize that we're all talking out of our ass. But in a sense, I almost had this glass cannon psychology build, right? Where it's so heavily fueled by ego that when things are going well, like I said, feast or famine, I'm on top of the world, I'm fueled, I feel insane, and then I crashed like Icarus, and I didn't have those defense mechanisms in play, and I didn't know what the fuck to do. You know, like, I think David's right that like when you do make it, you're absolute everything. Because Mally, what you're saying is that at the top level, right, you have to be fueled by ego. And sure. But we see those people at the top level, but what about when they fail, when they do come down? Like, we don't usually get to see the internals of how they go, but it's not fun and it's not pretty. And sometimes it does kill a career. It gets to a point where, you know, they're so incapable of being at the pits and in the dregs that it changes their sense of self and their identity, which is, you know, what I want to go into next, is that, like, if your identity is purely based off of what you can do, right, like David is saying with your ego, if your identity is, I'm really, really strong, I'm the champion, I'm the shit, I'm the man, and then you get to a point where you're not that, and you realize it, and it's cognizant with you, and you look around and you go, I am not that. Now it flips, because now you are injured, weak, 30th place, not strong anymore, washed up. That now becomes your identity, because what was your identity wasn't concrete enough. It was it was fallible, rather, to a sense that if you cannot perform, you now become the band that can't perform. And if that becomes your identity, because now I want to talk a little bit about like feedback loops, how do you get out of that, right? So let's say that we fall for the trappings that David has warned us against, and we are now, the identity is injured. I am injured. I think that Amelia Potter actually put up a good post about this the other day on her thing, where it's like, if your identity is, you know, injured, battered, bruised, and that is how you think about yourself, now you fall into this negative feedback loop of, you know, if you believe you are who you are, and that is how you maneuver your life, and you believe that you're washed up and injured, you will just continue to be washed up and injured. You have to break that cycle, right? So how do we break that cycle? What are some ways that, you know, Adam's finally on the up and up after a while of this. How were you able to manage this and maneuver your mind in a sense that you weren't just sick and washed up, but now like you're gaining traction again?
Pick strategic battles, right? So like maybe instead of beefing with people who are at full health, I'm picking smaller enemies, trying to climb my way back to the big well, you know,
picking on sick kids.
Yeah, you know, it's like I'm just being strategic with who I'm matching myself up against, I guess. I actually do find that valuable, and it's been valuable throughout my career. Is like finding people to hunt down has always been useful for me, and trying to prove that I can be better than them. And then when I surpass them, it's on to the next person until I get back to the final boss at the top. Then it's showtime.
Hell, that's kind of fucked up.
Hey, if Adam is in your
That's what I was
DMs
expecting.
making fun of your sickness, please DM us and let us know.
I was expecting just, yeah, go to your local hospital, find like some kid that's like just extremely sick, like terminal, but I'm stronger than you, by the way. Like, I'm sick too.
It's getting a little
but,
late for Adam.
I actually don't disagree that like getting small wins and building that momentum up probably is a good way to go about things, right? Like you just have to start building momentum and like climbing out of that hole. But I guess it's just fucked up to put it in that way. I don't know. I didn't expect that.
I said what I said. All right, I said what I said.
Alright,
So
I
we're
forgot what
talking
talking
mindset.
about bad feedback loops.
We're
What?
talking mindset, not like specifically programming how to bring yourself out of injury and stuff.
No, I mean, Clean Strength Fitness will be doing a video series on that later. You know, a little teaser alert. So we don't have to play on that now. We can deal with the less physical, right? Like,
Okay.
how do I get my
So-
brain to go, I'm not Mr. Injured, I'm Mr. Recovering?
I think you'd have to like almost get like create almost like a reset protocol for yourself in a way of taking, if like you're in this drought or whatever, taking emotion out of it and letting logic dictate things. So maybe instead of getting emotional about where you're at, you can logically create steps to get back to where you were, whether that be reframing a goal, right? Like create a new goal, and let's see, like having small wins. So finding those small wins each session, and if you're like super injured and stuff like that, like a good way would be starting with like recovery first and then building yourself up in that sense.
Whoever's gonna say something, hold that thought. Bray, cut this. I gotta go pee. My identity is man that has to go pee.
I like that jazz poster.
Bray, start.
Didn't you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, I think that like reframing things has actually kind of been the way that I've gone about it, right? So I've like sort of touched on this in the past that like I kind of view powerlifting as like an art project, and you know, in the same sense that like we are writing a story, right? So for me, the way I framed it is just that, you know, like I am the hero of my own story, and every hero has to have their downfall at some point, right? So I accept this part of my story and, you know, this little area, but then we need to now take on the mantle of coming back, right? There's no good story that just ends with the hero's downfall. That's not, you know, that's not satisfying, right? So now the identity shifts from, you know, broken and, you know, fallen to, you know, struggling. You know, everyone likes Berserk. I've never read it, right? But Guts is like known as like the struggler, right? So that's just where I am now, right? I will don that mantle of the struggler, and I will struggle until I am at the point where I assume a new identity of the recovery, until I am the recovered, until I am now the man getting stronger, until I am strong again, and then eventually I even surpass that old identity of, you know, who I was. So I think to some degree is I've allowed myself to almost assume a new identity as it comes and be a bit more fluid with it and accept that where I am is not where I will remain. Given, you know, that I put in the effort, and given that I allow my ego to drive me out of this hole just a bit, but obviously the ego is bruised and damaged and it isn't what it once was. But that's okay, because I can just, you know, continue to wear different masks in a sense. And, you know, I am where I am and I am who I am. And hopefully tomorrow I am someone that is slightly changed and different. And that is my mindset towards things.
Sorry, I laughed because Adam laughed. My bad, for real, bro. I was relating.
No,
And
that-
Adam laughed.
That was beautiful, Nick. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, that was really nice. Sorry, Adam has like a really kiddish, giggly laugh where he kind of looks down and giggles, and I fucking start laughing. Anytime I see that shit, I gotta laugh. Bro.
I vented to the homies and they laughed at me. I'm gonna kill myself.
No one asked me, but I'll tell you guys what my process is.
No, we don't care. We don't care.
Yeah. Mine has kind of been about. I would say I kind of have an ego while I train, and in life always I've kind of had a little bit of an ego, but it doesn't come from I'm the best. It comes from let me prove you wrong, kind of thing. I've always even after I won and whatever, there was still people saying that I wasn't good enough. So that's what drove me out of being really hurt and getting me back to some sort of a baseline. or even before, snapping my shit all the time. It was always, oh, you're not good enough anyways, so you might as well keep trying and keep going. So that's where that ego came from. And then now Clifton smoked all of our asses. So shout out to Cliff, nasty total. But now again, no one counts me in. I bet you everyone is probably like, there's no fucking way Malley's beating him. But that drives the shit out of me. And that's where my ego comes from. So I'll always use that underdog mentality in everything I do, to have a little bit of ego, to keep trying really fucking hard and keep pushing. But that's my little thing. I kind of use it to my advantage to kind of just keep going. And I turn it into a little bit of ego. I just go, watch me. That's kind of my thing. I don't know. And even if I do,
can't say, I can't say that's like a non-valid strategy, because it's clearly worked to this point, right? Because I am thinking back, like you've had some, relatively like poignant failures in your career. Like I'm thinking primarily at like, Westerns, when we all fucked up, right? And how you bounce back from that is just sticking to your guns and sticking to your mentality of like, well, if anything, this is just another point in which people are going to, dog on you, for lack of a better term. And it's just another point in which, if you do succeed, you can prove them wrong. So I guess in your scenario, it's just, if anything, you double down on the ego almost as like a defense mechanism, right? Like if you just never give up on the ego, you almost become like too angry to die in a sense, right? Tune in, in 5 years to see if Malley has, sustained this or
if
not,
he's alive.
Yeah,
I don't know.
because I think that's like, because that's ultimately like the problem or even question that like David brings up, right? Is this idea that like, is it sustainable? Like, will there be, and I hope for your sake, I hope for all of our sakes there isn't, but is there going to ever be a challenge or a downfall in your life in which, ego doesn't work as a jumping off point, but, you crash through it instead?
So
ego can only be a safety net to a point.
I've actually had that conversation with myself. I think there's a reason why I kind of do this to myself, or right now I'm comfortable doing this with myself, is because I know that I'm probably not going to try and be this competitive in 5 years. That's an honest conversation I've had with myself. I'm going to train. I'm going to train because I love training, but I am not going to be this competitive driven in 5 years. And I've already given myself that timeline. So I'm okay with that, because I know that I'm going to do this really crazy underdog, self-driven mentality of ego for 3, maybe 4 years, and then I'm not doing it. And then maybe I'll come back as a master, but I'm not going to do it for a significant amount of time. And I think that conversation made me go double down, do it now.
Yeah. So actually, while you were saying that, you said the word that I was thinking, which was underdog, right? Because I think that if you frame your own identity as the underdog, it's almost nice, because failure almost reinforces that identity. So like, I'll pose this question to you, Malley. What if you win? Like, you can't be the underdog if you win. So what if you win?
No. But then I'm the underdog world.
What if you were to win Worlds?
Then I'm the underdog at Sheffield. You're always an underdog somewhere.
What if you, because I think that the issue with the underdog identity, so to speak, is that it needs to have a point, because otherwise it's pointless.
No,
if you get to that point, what does it do?
I don't want to get too personal about it, but there's obviously a lot of shit that's happened in my life that's kind of made me have this mentality of like, I'm not enough, so I'm always going to try to fight to be good enough. I'm not going to get into the details because no one cares, but that's just who I am. So yeah, I'm not telling other people. I don't think this is sustainable at all. That's why I'm saying even myself, I'm giving myself a timeline. But I just think it's because of who I am that this works. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, your identity is your own. I do think that it's maybe a bit demeaning to say, but I do think that, you know, some chosen identities are perhaps, you know, stronger than others, you know, more built for the task of what if it doesn't, right? Like David gave us initially, right? I think that, you know, any junior that touts themselves as, you know, their identity is the next big thing or like future champion, what if not? You know, are you okay with that? Are you able to pivot to, you know, something else? And I do think that's the danger of like both identity and ego, is that if we sort of give ourselves or don the wrong mantles, they can become very destructive. If we have, you know, let's say I'm completely unproven, I've never won a national championship, but I give myself the mantle of, you know, 2026 national champion, and I have that ego to back it up, and then I lose. What do? A lot of people, they quit the sport, right? Genuinely, you'll see this often, is like the guys saying they're going to be the next big thing, they fall a little short, and they don't know how to cope with it, and you never hear from them again. Whereas other guys or girls, you know, other lifters, athletes, people in general, perhaps they don a bit more of a fluid identity of sorts, wherein, you know, maybe it is just strong lifter getting stronger. And therefore, when they get to that point, whether they lose or win or succeed or fail, they're able to pivot and they're able to, you know, be more adaptable with things. And their ego reflects that in a sense. I think that identities can be, you know, very reinforcing both negatively and positively. I think that they can create loops that, you know, like in Adam's case, lead to a lot of positive momentum if he's going to become the strongest man in the ICU unit. Or, you know, it can become very negatively reinforcing, you know, if it is just like, you know, your identity is the constantly broken man. If you're constantly broken, if you're constantly broken.
Tell me I'm not a man on a mission, though, adapting my goals.
It's fucked up. It's just fucked up, dude. Or you can have like a very negatively, you know, reinforcing identity of like, genuine. I see this so often. If you think that you are broken and that it becomes your identity and everyone knows you as man that is broken and man that has been snapped and blah, 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 and you assume that entirely and that's all you talk about and that's the only thoughts that you have is how broken I am, you will stay that way forever. Right? We've seen it. The number one example I can think of right now beyond myself is like Jesse Norris. I don't know why, but like I think Jesse Norris fell for this, where like he constantly thought that like the most he could lift was 585, and he would do 585 on pulls for like sets of 20, pull 600, snap. Do you know what I mean? It can sometimes be as acute as that. If you think that all you can pull is 585 and you are Mr. 585, if I do more than this, I snap. You'll do more than that and you'll snap every time. And we need to almost let our ego down and accept that we can be something other than that and that we can be wrong about our own identities and we can morph them into something that can be more conducive to eventually assuming an identity that we're maybe proud of. I think I'm good with that. Anything else, guys?
What about taking your ego home with you to I don't know. I think you know what I'm trying to say. Like
No, I
I
don't.
don't.
Idea.
No, I
I
don't.
No clue.
Okay. Like taking your, like let's say you have a really big ego, right? You're an egotistical athlete who thinks you're the best, and you're taking it out on people like friends, family, people at home. Like,
You're going, oh, fuck you, mom. I bench press more than you. I'm not cleaning my room.
I'm full 800. Fuck off.
If that is really the case, then you're
What do
just
you
an
mean?
asshole of a person.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I'm just
It's
I've
just
seen
being
it. I've
maladjusted.
seen people do it. I've seen people do that shit, bro.
Is it you? Did you do it?
They,
you
well,
confessing?
what I'm trying to say is they're trying. They think they're the best. Well, like the way they think they're the best. Like like Nick said, he's like the best power lifter. He felt like he was the best deadlifter in the world when he was pulling 800 or whatever. He thought he was.
No,
so
I did. Ina is better than me. I always know
Okay,
that.
whatever.
I've always played
You
second
know what I
fiddle.
mean.
Don't
Like,
put words in my mouth.
you felt like you were like a god at some point, right? You were on top of the world. How did you separate it from your life? Because some people will be assholes to people they're around.
I
Like,
think.
they'll just think they're best all the time.
Yeah. So in my scenario, it
Because
was
they're identity.
I am so good in the gym, but I knew that was it. So when I went home, I was like, all right, this isn't the gym anymore. I'm a loser. And that was okay. I was really good at one thing, but I had no, delusions or reservations that an 800 pull translates to anything beyond being good at deadlifting. All right. I didn't think that I was holier than thou because I could lift a couple reds.
Yeah.
And
So if you take anything away with this, if you're really strong, that's all you got, probably.
I mean, yeah, but I don't know if that's even a takeaway beyond just like, don't be a maladjusted human being. Powerlifting doesn't extend much beyond, other things, maybe to some extent, but you aren't a better businessman because you're good at benching,
Nick Commander is not an asshole. Can't confirm.
No, that's not true either. I am an asshole, but I have other reasons for that. Anyways, insane. And no, I've never thought I was the best deadlift in the world.
Yeah.
Haru Asin is the best deadlifter in the world.
Nick, you want to know something really sad? The other day, there's a new kid at the gym. He's probably not going to listen to this, so I can say it. But he's like, oh, yeah, I saw a really strong guy the other day lifting like 220. And I was just like, oh, sick. That's crazy. And then we were just talking about people like at the gym. And I was like, you ever hear about Nick? He's like, no fucking idea who that is. And I'm like, oh,
That's why a malleable identity is important. Because if you had said that 2 years ago, blown my head, move off my shoulders. Now, I just accept that's fine. That's where I am. I wouldn't know about me either. And that's okay. See, this is coming to terms with things, right?
Full circle. This is all about maturity and growth.
But understand this. This does fuel me to come back. There is an ego aspect to this where it's like he will know my name, right?
Look at Nick finding his enemies. He's finding his enemies.
Yeah, some random fucking kid kings that doesn't know who I am.
Tell me right now.
I mean, right now, sitting here, my leg hurts, so I understand where I'm at. But I also understand that I will be somewhere else in a year, maybe. And in saying that, I think that we can close off this episode of the podcast before Mally says anything else.
come on. I think it was a good end.
Thank you guys for tuning in. If you're tuning in from Adam's ICU unit, I'm so sorry. I still think that you're strong and capable. Anyways, that's been us and our identities and egos. I hope you guys caught something from this. If you did, honestly, I'm going to start doing it. I'm going to start being like, like, subscribe, share. I want more feedback on this shit because we're like 6-7 episodes in and no one's ever told me anything yet. I know you guys are all saying that people are giving you guys feedback. I receive nothing. DM me feedback. Nick Manders. That is my identity. Give me feedback.
They don't know who you are anymore.
Shut up!
Don't know
Shut the
you.
fuck up!
Strongest deadlifter in the world. It came out of his mouth. I heard him say that
Shut
too.
up! You guys don't know who I am.
Bro, when you first said that
I don't know who
ICU
I
joke,
am.
I was laughing so hard I almost fell off my chair and I was like coughing.
Alright.
Alright, stop the
Bye-bye.
recording.
Uh,